Welcome. This is the Candidates Forum for the 5th Hampden District, Food Justice and Health Equity. The candidates for the 5th Hampden District are David Bartley, Patrick Beaudry, and Patricia Duffy. This forum is moderated by Natalia Muñoz.
Thank you for coming tonight to the 5th Hampden Virtual Candidates Forum. I'm Laura Sylvester from the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, and we're excited to have Dave Bartley, Pat Beaudry, and Pat Duffy here tonight to talk about issues that are important to Holyoke voters. This primary is to replace Rep. Aaron Vega, who is stepping down after 8 years. The primary is September 1st, and the deadline to register to vote is Saturday, August 22nd at 8 p.m. You can register online at the Massachusetts Secretary of State's website. We have early voting and vote by mail now in Massachusetts, so there's no need to go in person to the polls if you're avoiding public spaces. You can get all of this information at the Secretary of State's website, plus a lot more. I'd like to give a big thank you to our co-sponsors for this forum, CISA, Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective, Valley Opportunity Council, and WestMass ElderCare. If you're with us live on Zoom, you have the option to have the form translated into Spanish. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen in the lower control bar. Select Spanish as your preferred language. Now I'd like to turn things over to our moderator for the evening, Natalia Muñoz. Natalia is a multimedia journalist whose articles have appeared in the Associated Press, the New York Daily News, the San Juan Star, El Vocero, and Ms. Magazine. She is the host of Vaya con Muñoz on WHMP AM 1400 radio, Saturdays at 10 a.m., and a contributor to El Sol Latino monthly newspaper and to the Daily Hampshire Gazette. Take it away, Natalia.
Thank you, Laura. So yes, indeed, the 5th Hampden Holyoke Candidates Forum is tonight. We're going to have 2 rounds of questions tonight. Round 1 will consist of 4 questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Christina Maxwell of the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts will be the timekeeper. Candidates, you will see when you have 30 seconds left, then 15 seconds. Then when the time is up, you will see a stop sign. If you go over time, you will hear a sound. Please keep to the allotted time. If you don't use the entire 90 seconds, that's fine. We'll move on to the next candidate. And round 2 will be slightly different. There are 12 questions. Each candidate will answer 4 of the 12 questions and have 60 seconds to answer. At each turn, candidates will choose a number between 1 and 12, and I will read the corresponding question. Each question can only be answered once. After round 2, we will have closing remarks from the candidates, and each candidate will have 90 seconds. Are there any questions before we begin?
Just a test of the audio. I didn't hear a word that was said for the first 5 minutes, so I assume you can hear me, and we'll go from there.
Do you hear me now, Counselor?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Okay. I hope Pat can hear, but I could not hear the first speaker at all.
Okay, but now that you can hear us, we can move forward.
Lock and load.
Okay, our three candidates are David Bartley, Patrick Beaudry, and Patricia Duffy. They are running to replace State Representative Aaron Vega, who is stepping down after 4 terms. David Bartley was born and raised and educated in Holyoke. Just for the sake of clarity, if you're not speaking, can you please put your microphone on mute so we don't hear background noise coming from you? Okay, David Bartley was born and raised and educated in Holyoke. He is in his 5th term as a Ward 3 representative to the Holyoke City Council, where he has served as chairman of the Development and Governmental Relations Chairman since 2014. Among his highlights as councillor, Mr. Bartley initiated the Purple Heart Trail that runs along Route 202, as well as Holyoke Day at the annual Eastern States Exposition. Councillor Bartley is a full-time practicing attorney with an office located on Northampton Street. He was educated at Western New England School of Law and graduated in 2005 after attending night school courses. Mr. Bartley served as a senior auditor for the State Auditor's Office under Suzanne Bump and Joseph DiNucci. His work included auditing public housing authorities and private nonprofit corporations. Mr. Bartley has a master's degree in public administration and a BA from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He is a homeowner in Holyoke. Patrick Beaudry has served in state government, currently as manager of public affairs for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. He spent 3 of those years on Beacon Hill as a legislative aide for lawmakers, including Holyoke State Representative Mike Kane and Massachusetts' first Latina state senator, Sonia Chang Diaz. A 6th-generation Holyoker and Oakdale homeowner, Pat is a proud alumnus of the Holyoke Public Schools, Suffolk University, and the University of Massachusetts, Boston's McCormick School of Policy and Global Studies. He has volunteered for local organizations, including WestMass ElderCare, Meals on Wheels program, the Holyoke Walking and Biking Committee, and is a big brother with Big Brothers and Sisters of Hampden County. In 2018, he was named Gateway Cities Leader by Mass Inc. Gateway Cities Innovation Institute. Patricia Duffy grew up in an Air Force family. She has a BA in political science from Tufts University and worked at Boston Publishing Company, Houghton Mifflin, before resuming her education. She graduated from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst with an MA in sociology, bought her first home in Holyoke in 2004, and immediately got involved, fighting the privatization of city sewers, volunteering for local political campaigns, joining the parade committee, the board of Nueva Esperanza, and the Redevelopment Authority Board. In 2014, she was hired as a legislative aide for Holyoke's Rep. Aaron Vega. While working for Aaron, Pat has resolved hundreds of constituent issues while helping to craft legislation on Beacon Hill. More recently, during the COVID-19 crisis, Pat has been working alongside Aaron to help constituents negotiate unemployment claims, find out their options for small business loans, and stay up to date on food providers and reports from local hospitals. Okay, so first up in the first round is David Bartley. And the question, Mr. Bartley, Councillor Bartley, is there are already programs implemented to address food insecurity in the district, the region, and the state. What's working well? What's not? What would you do to fix or improve programs to help make them better?
Yeah, so there's certainly a learning curve on that for me. I appreciate the background that you gave to me. The specific programs, certainly the Food Bank of Western Mass. Years ago I volunteered there when I worked for Suzanne Bump, and I've donated money there over the years. So my expectation is that that's working well, but it's probably not working as probably being overworked. And so there's the importance of that. I'll end this way. There's a mobile food bank now that's been part of Providence Ministries. I think it's 2 days a week. So we were helpful to promote that when it came into City Council in June. And as far as what's not working, certainly the demand is overwhelming the supply, and that's got to be addressed. And how we can do that is support local agriculture as best we can, and if we can support it from a legislative standpoint, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Ms. Patricia Duffy, the same question.
So locally, I think what's working well is the incredible network of food providers. I saw them kick in. I've worked with them over the years, but I saw them kick in amazingly when the schools went remote. I mean, our Holyoke Public Schools provide a lot of the food for local families, and just seeing the Food Bank of Western Mass, the mobile food markets, other networks, making sure that that food was being provided. I think it's working well, is nimble. They know how to lobby and advocate for donations, the USDA, etc. A really great program that could work a lot better is the Healthy Incentives Program, whereby SNAP recipients are given vouchers for local farmers markets to get buy local healthy food. It's a fantastic program, and it often gets suspended mid-year because it runs out. And what we're told by the administration is that, oh, it's a victim of its own success. That's not acceptable. We need to have more funding, more consistent. The funding's been growing every year, but we need more funding, more consistency. And it's not 100% clear that everyone who's eligible for it knows it. DTA have contracts with like the buy local groups here to help with outreach and educate those on SNAP that they're eligible for this incredible program. Those contracts have not been renewed. So, you know, do we make this part of a regular DTA staff workers' casework to do this education? We need to bring in more support and programming and help for that.
Your time is up. I'm sorry to say, I
Yeah.
don't know if you see the sign that says stop.
Yeah, so you should know I can't see the sign. So
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's fine. Can you expand your window, your Zoom window, so you can see all the squares?
All right, let me make sure I can do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Patrick Boudreau, do you want me to repeat the question for you?
No, I think I have the gist of it. So I would definitely second Pat Duffy's support for the Healthy Incentives Program. In my mind, that's actually probably what perfect policy looks like, because we're not only taking care of families who need that nutritional support, but we're supporting our local farmers and making sure that we're preserving the farmland that is in a lot of ways a hallmark of our valley and its culture. So I just think the idea that we're incentivizing local produce that we're serving up on our local tables is a great program. I actually, my girlfriend and I stepped up for the almost 2 months of the peak of COVID to deliver Meals on Wheels Monday through Friday through WestMass ElderCare. And I just had such a great appreciation for what they provide. And even though our turf was only about a dozen folks, it wasn't just lunch, it was dinner, it was weekend bags. It was really, for some people, their only source of nutrition. And we were able to provide PPE, toilet paper, all types of stuff. Lastly, big shout out to Holyoke Public Schools. I was down at Kelly and Morgan number of times seeing the food distribution for families. And I think that in lieu of all of that, we also saw organizations like St. Paul's and the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club step up and make sure that whatever families weren't eligible for all this myriad of programs were able to get it. So it takes a village to make sure everyone's fed, but at the end of the day, 0 is the correct number of people who go to bed hungry in Holyoke.
Thank you, Mr. Beaudry. I'm sorry I mispronounced your name a couple of times there.
It's all right.
Thank you. The next question goes to Pat Duffy. Holyoke has a large Black and brown population. If elected, how would you make sure that the government is working for all the people of Holyoke and not just for the white or wealthy residents?
I would build on my relationships that I've had over the years in this community. As soon as I moved here, I was working with Nueva Esperanza. I had the incredible opportunity to learn about Nuestras Raíces. All the work I do, I always use a frame of equity. So learning about by asking and listening, what are unintended consequences of different policies? What isn't reaching the people that it needs to reach? I mean, the HIP is an example of that. They're a good example. What I hope is a good policy right now is the food infrastructure grants that have just been offered by the state administration. I'm hoping that usually when there's RFPs out to food providers, it's usually the larger farms that are able to take advantage of that. So with this, it's smaller and perhaps more nimble food producers who can take advantage of that. And I think in this region, just because of historical circumstances, those are often the Black and brown farmers. And we want to support them, support urban farms like Nuestras Raíces. Those are just some examples, just making sure I'm learning, listening, reaching out. I know the city well enough to know who I'm not hearing from, if that makes sense. Thank you. I see the sign now.
Mr. Beaudry, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, it's good, Natalia. Recently an organization was formed, a coalition of staffers of color on Beacon Hill called the Beacon Block, Buildings Leaders of Color. And again, I gave Councilor Bartley a shout out last night. I'll do it again. My legislative aide will be a Latinx Spanish speaking person. We're going to make sure that whether you speak English or Spanish, you're going to have access to your state representative's office. And so I'll proudly have my staffer be a member of that organization next year. But one of their proposals to House leadership is to create an office of policy equity through which all bills flow through, and we can put reports and understand exactly what the unintended consequences may be in terms of equity for any policy. We know for too long the voices that have been weighed most heavily on Beacon Hill have been white and affluent. And we want to make sure when we're representing a city like Holyoke that we're representing all of the city. And so I think that that's easily just one part of it. I want to leverage the union endorsements I've gotten on this campaign to make sure that there's apprenticeship programs that are bringing people of color into building trades and public safety professions so that this recovery effort is inclusive and that everyone in Holyoke has a clear pathway to either middle class or to pursuing their professional aspirations and making sure there's a roof over everyone's head and food on everyone's table.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, Natalia, I'm good. Thank you. I think the question is the Black and brown population, make sure that government is working for all the people of Holyoke. So first of all, thanks my friend Pat. Pat mentioned that last night, and the reason what he was pointing out is that I said from day one of this campaign that if we're elected, we will have the first person of bilingual ability on the staff of the state representative in the history of the city of Holyoke. No, has not happened to date. I also believe that it's never happened in the state senator's office either. I don't believe that Mr. Bielis has if he does, it'd be news to me, but he would be the first from the state senator's perspective to have somebody. So what does that mean? That means it's going to help increase the dialogue. It's going to make communication a lot more efficient, effective. And so how are we going to communicate? Well, I've had 5 years of experience having neighborhood meetings. I've had additional 5 years experience on top of that, having bi-monthly newsletters. So I'm pretty good at communicating and I'm pretty good at listening. And the last way we'll finish is that we've got to bring people of color into government. I've been saying that for years. Former Councilor Nelson Roman and I have forwarded legislation to do that. But again, we have no leadership in room one. We have a lot of rhetoric coming out of room one in Holyoke, which is City Hall, not much in the way of effort, and it's disappointing. And so leadership is a constant theme of my campaign, and I know that's a theme of others too. So we will change that dynamic soon in the state reps, and we'll change in City Hall very soon as well.
Thank you. This is the third question, and the first one to answer will be Mr. Beaudry. Holyoke and our region have been particularly hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many individuals and families who have been working to raise themselves out of poverty are now finding it difficult to sustain themselves. If elected, what would be your priorities to be going forward in COVID relief and recovery?
Sure. There's a lot there, but we'll start with just what uniquely makes Holyoke and greater Springfield metro area vulnerable, which is we're the asthma capital of the country. And so a respiratory disease is naturally going to impact us disproportionately. When I think about smart policy, I often think about, not just what affects middle-class families, upper middle-class families, but what's going to impact them in ways that they don't see. And I think paid family leave is a great example where perhaps you get to work from home. Perhaps your family is attending remotely or you're homeschooling because you have the means to do so. But you go out and get food from a takeout restaurant. Guess what? The person who's preparing your food does not have sick time. They do not have the ability to miss a shift if they're feeling unwell. And so we're never going to get ahead of this virus if we don't ensure that every single worker in Massachusetts who feels any type of symptoms of COVID-19 can stay home without worrying about missing rent or not being able to provide food for their family that day, that week. So I really think that this is a big picture. We cannot be penny wise and pound foolish with that. And, I think that we need to think a lot about the fact that we had a great tragedy unfold at the Soldiers' Home. And we think a lot about the veterans and we think a lot about the nurses, and rightfully so. But there are people of color mopping those floors and serving those meals. And we need to make sure that they're protected as well moving forward to ensure that we're not spreading this disease inadvertently for reasons that we could avoid.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley?
Yeah, great question, pertinent, right on point. As you saw the news today, Holyoke and Granby are made the top 10 in terms of per capita. But Holyoke's been in the top 15 virtually since day one. It's the nature of this community. What is also the nature of this community is that we don't have free testing. Somehow Springfield does, and somehow Agawam does. But Holyoke, despite the thousands of dollars in COVID relief money, does not. I have volunteered, and through my business clients, we've donated PPE and masks to HPD, HFD, the South Holyoke Neighborhood Association on multiple occasions, and it's the words of gratitude and relief are palpable. I mean, they're so humbled, and myself and my business clients we're happy to do that. But why is the city of Holyoke constantly giving jobs to friends of the mayor, put him in the board of the health? We just put in a new job for his former chief of staff. It's $62,000 a year. Just started, has absolutely zero health knowledge. We'll expand upon that a little bit more. And I realize I get knocked as a quote unquote critic of the mayor, but he brings it on himself by hiring friends, families, and loved ones for jobs for which they are unqualified. So we've got to move forward in getting testing out there and protective equipment and masks to people. And if they can't afford it, let's get it to them free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartley. Ms. Duffy. Your microphone, please.
Could I ask you to repeat the question?
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Holyoke and our region have been hit particularly hard by COVID-19 pandemic, by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many individuals and families who have been working to raise themselves out of poverty are now finding it difficult to sustain themselves. If elected, what will be your priority? What will be your priorities going forward in the COVID relief and recovery?
All right, so number one, we have to all rally and lobby and advocate the federal government. They need to kick in. I mean, the state programs also should continue to kick in, but the state is mandated to balance its budget. The federal government has those extra reserves, and negotiations go on, but that relief is for real. The extra pandemic unemployment, that was an important help and an important move. But I believe in a federal stimulus, especially, this is an emergency. This is an emergency and we need a federal stimulus. Also, 100% agree. I learned from direct care workers They've been out there working the whole time. As businesses are reopening, people need to feel safe. They need to know who they can go to if they feel like their workplace is unsafe. And it's from direct care workers, those devoted healthcare workers and grocery store workers, et cetera, from whom we can learn best practices. And they need the extra sick leave, they need the protection. So yeah, I learn and take my lead from them.
Thank you, Ms. Duffy. The fourth question, Mr. Bartley, you are number one to answer it. The question is, since farmers struggle to make a living and so many of their neighbors struggle with food insecurity, what ideas do you have for getting locally grown food to our neighbors who do not have enough food?
Well, I'm gonna accept your premises that farmers struggle to make a living, and we've got to do a better job of getting the supply chain move forward. The ideas are going to be as follows: to understand, meet with farmers, hear from them, get a sense as to what their needs are. At the other end of the coin, to talk. And you can do that by going to the farmers market, which I did for years when I worked on High Street, then High Street 195. When I was down there for 8 years, I went to the farmers market daily. Every week, I should say, weekly. And so it's understanding their position. It's understanding what the supply chain looks like, and it's understanding what the end user needs are. But before I do that, listen, I'm not gonna make up a tale that I really don't know all the dynamics, but that's something I'm willing to learn, and I would dedicate myself to getting more educated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beaudry.
Could you repeat it, Natalia, please?
Of course. Since farmers struggle to make a living and so many of their neighbors struggle with food insecurity, what ideas do you have for getting locally grown food to our neighbors who do not have enough?
Sure.
Food?
So I think we're kind of staying on the hip, the healthy incentive program line of thinking. It's a great program. We need to make sure that it's never suspended again. So I actually had the privilege in my role at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to participate in a 2-day workshop called Local Places, Local Food, Holyoke, which is a interagency effort where they kind of parachute in a number of federal and state agencies to understand the food systems, the needs, and develop an action plan. And this was about 2018, I believe. And one of the action items that was identified was creating a healthy bodega program. And essentially what it would do is coordinate a collaborative that would be able to purchase local fresh produce across our bodegas, which we know in Holyoke, particularly in wards 1 and 2, can serve as the primary source of food for families. And so ensuring that they are offering local food, ensuring that farmers have these outlets in which they can exercise their HIP benefit to see a 1-for-1 reimbursement back on their EBT card when they're purchasing local foods, I think is a home run. And just ensuring that there's a right to grow in our community, and that those who choose to use their private property to produce food are able to sell it within regulated terms, I think is a great effort. And during COVID, I'm seeing local backyard farms pop up all over the place. Clearly there's a hunger for it, and I would love to continue to support it. Thank
you. Ms. Duffy.
So hip.
Hooray.
Yeah, expanding. The thing about this pandemic is I've actually seen a lot of innovation, entrepreneurs becoming more nimble as we focus in on a local food market. There's the Good Food in Every Hood program, bringing school children in to learn about farming, learn about cooking, learn about nutrition, anything we can do to incentivize local purchasing. This pandemic has laid bare the weakness in a national food structure. I mean, you have one meat wholesaler in the Midwest shut down, and all of a sudden we all have a meat shortage. So let's look at the richness of local farming and incentivize it whenever possible. Of course, the Mass Food Systems Collaborative have a fantastic, voluminous local plan, and I would basically read and take every incentive that they recommend. Looking at programs like Nuestras Raíces, Good Food in Every Hood, also expanding the agricultural preservation restriction, which does incentivize farmers passing down their farmland to the next generation. Right now it has a 5-acre limit, but maybe we could get more flexible with that.
Thank you, Ms. Duffy. Now we move on to the second round. And in this round, each of you will choose up to 4 questions. Ms. Duffy, you're first. Which question would you like to be asked?
I will take number 7.
Number 7 is, how can Massachusetts better align our food system, public health, and economic development efforts?
So this whole system is intertwined. And again, the Mass Food Systems Collaborative, they lead the way. I went to their conference last October when we went to conferences in person. And I was like, oh, this is what we need to do, is put farmers and poor people in a room together, have them figure out how they meet each other's needs, and then implement whatever policies they have. If we start with education, teaching kids about whole nutrition, incentivizing their families to look for local food, programs like HIP that allow those with less income to buy local food. I mean, it shouldn't be just the province of people with disposable income who can buy local, healthy food. You go from education to health. Programs like at the Holyoke Health Center, where they taught that food is medicine. It's a whole system that, and
I'm sorry, your time is up. Okay, so Mr. Beaudry, which question would you like to be asked?
So I just got blank questions, so this is news to me that I was able to select my questions. So just throw one at me. Let's see what happens.
Okay, I'll throw the first one at you.
All right.
How would you address social isolation and food insecurity for older adults during COVID, understanding people over 65 and those with certain health conditions are safer at home to minimize risk and exposure?
Sure. So, I already referenced, but I put in quite a bit of time during COVID on Meals on Wheels. And, the information around COVID and how it spread was very new. We were masked up, we were gloved up, we were hand sanitizing between every delivery. And I think that generally you would spend a little bit more time with these seniors than we would do. We were trying to really minimize any kind of contact, any kind of proximity. We're learning more, although we need to be humble in what we know, but really trying to expand our understanding of like, what are the safe ways that these folks who are spending every day, Monday through Friday anyhow, with these folks and providing that social interaction with them. I also think that we can get seniors up on Zoom and perhaps working with the Council on Aging and Elder Affairs to provide devices where people can learn very easily, very quickly. I know it needs to be streamlined, but ways in which they can access Zoom and other services like it, so they're able to stay in touch with loved ones and family during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, what question would you like to be asked?
Yeah, I'm with Pat. I don't have the list of questions, so just pick one.
Okay, I'll ask you then the second question on the list.
I'm just going to explain that you just pick a number. I don't have the questions. I just picked a number.
Oh, yeah, I don't. You want me to just pick? Just pick a number for me, Natalia. It's all good.
All right, I'm picking number 2. Sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
According to the 2017 National Agricultural Statistics Services, There are 523 farms in the 1st Congressional District. However, only 56 of these farms have a producer who identifies as non-white. How will you work to help increase farmland access opportunities for people of color in Massachusetts who have traditionally been left out of the farmland access opportunities as more farmland becomes available across the state?
Wow. I'll go back to okay, in 60 seconds or less. Let's figure that one out. Okay, so here we go.
I think you have 60 seconds.
What are our assets? Our assets are our diversity, and as I said to you earlier, we're gonna figure out the communication skills. But one of the biggest assets we have in Western Massachusetts is a Stockbridge School and my beloved alma mater, University of Mass, which I referenced the other night, which I don't even think I get it accepted these days. So we have a great agricultural college right here up the road in the People's Republic of Amherst. So that's something that I would advocate, and as a UMass grad, they almost have to let me in there to take people around, I think. And so that's something I would desperately want to be a part of. I love stats like that. They're fascinating to me. So you basically said 10% of the farms are non-white. And I think that's an important statistic for us to remember, and I'll keep that in mind going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. But now we return to Ms. Duffy. So you choose a number from 1 to 12.
Yeah.
What did you choose?
The next question, 3, whatever.
Oh, okay. How are you communicating with organizations in the district that serve low income and food insecure constituents? What have they told you about hunger in the district?
So as soon as the schools went remote, we've been running weekly meetings with the Holyoke school system and everybody who's working alongside them to make sure families are being fed. The Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, the food banks, the WestMass ElderCare, etc. So, and also importantly, Enlace das Familia, Betty Medina Lichtenstein is talking to everyone, and I talk to Betty Medina Lichtenstein whenever possible. So we're hearing, things like when the extra EBT cards came out in the summer, and every family who had a school-aged child, we heard stories about how the card wasn't working, and so we were able to get that information to the Food Bank of Western Mass. They were able to get that information to DTA, got it taken care of. So those lines of communication, those relationships are crucial, and I depend on them in any future work that I'll be doing.
Thank you. Mr. Beaudry?
I'll say question 9. I don't know. Look, we're playing right now.
What is your position regarding safe communities and immigration? What would you do to act in the legislature to address it?
This is a great question. And in my role at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, I've been lucky to work with the Pioneer Valley Worker Center, and they've made licensing undocumented Bay Staters one of their top policy priorities this year, and I am right there with them. I think we have a broken immigration policy at the federal level, and we are stuck in gridlock in Congress. But here in Massachusetts, we shouldn't be penalizing hardworking immigrants who are simply trying to get to work, trying to bring their families to important destinations like healthcare, school, and church, other social gatherings. So I really feel strongly that that's got to be the top priority for whoever Holyoke's next state representative is. And beyond that, just ensuring that our immigrant community can trust to work with law enforcement and understand that ICE and Holyoke PD are two separate entities with two different missions, and that if you can help or if you are a victim of a crime, that you can go to Holyoke Police and know that you'll be safe.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, what number would you like to choose?
Pat took mine, so I'm going to take. I took my 9. I'm going to take 8.
You're going to take 8? Okay.
Yeah, why not?
All right.
All right.
Holyoke has a well-developed early education infrastructure. One of the difficulties many early education providers face is staff retention due to low pay and low reimbursements from the state. The rate of reimbursement for subsidized slot is much lower in Western Massachusetts and in Holyoke for providers. This is an east-west disparity, and providers in Holyoke have many of the same costs associated with operating as those in eastern Massachusetts. How will you advocate for more equitable funding for early education centers so that they can flourish and sustain themselves economically?
Yeah, so I know I can only speak for myself, but I'm positive everybody would agree. We all believe in universal preschool and fair funding. We all three of us. I'm positive we would be all part of that. So, and then you're asking me a question where it'd be very easy to start blowing smoke, but that's not reasonable, is it? So we talked about it last time. We talked about other forums, the disparity, the weakness of leadership in Western Mass. It's pathetic. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think it's something that voters have to take that very seriously. I think the good news is we have 3 very credible candidates who care a whole hell of a lot about the city of Holyoke, about his students, about his teachers, and the schools themselves. So I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness!
You know what? That's like a perfect segue right there. So that's what we're talking about right there. Is the children? So is children of Holyoke, and I for one, being a public high school graduate and so fortunate to go to Holyoke High like I did with my 537 fellow classmates, and it's just a great history. So. I want others to have the same opportunity, and we'll do our best to fight for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bartley. We go back to Ms. Duffy. What number question would you like? You have 10, 11, 12, 4, 5, 6.
I'll take 12.
12, okay. What is your position on Medicare for all? Single payer? What do you plan to do to address it?
Yes. So I'll join the Medicare for All caucus. I will work with those who are supporting it. The caucus is constantly being briefed and educated from economists, healthcare experts, et cetera, who explain how that system actually leads to less costs for the average family. Yes, there probably will be a payroll tax, but it is so much less than your insurance payments and the crazy co-pays, et cetera, et cetera. Healthcare access for all. So I imagine that it will be filed again by Lindsay Sabadosa in the House and Jamie Eldridge in the Senate, and I will co-sponsor. I've pledged to, as the people of Holyoke asked us to in 2018, and fully support it.
Thank you. Mr. Beaudry, what you have questions 10, 11, 4, 5, 6 available to you?
6.
Okay. How important is the role of early education in preparing students to enter the public school system? Do you see this as integral to the education continuum to prepare our children for success? Will this be a priority, and how will you support or advocate in the legislature?
It's huge. And, Councilor Bartley already alluded to it. I don't think there's actually a lot of daylight between the 3 of us on this issue. We're seeing during COVID, during remote learning, the economic and social impacts of not having a place to send your child during the working hours. Not that working hours necessarily translates to a lot of low income workers. But the other piece of it is Holyoke kids need all the help they can get. They're coming from, in a lot of cases, low income households. They're coming from households with trauma. They're coming from households with English second language. And so I really think the sooner we get these kids into a learning environment, the better off they'll be. And it's proven that you're just going to benefit greatly from having that extra year. I know that I was able to benefit from a private preschool that my parents were able to send me to. And I think all kids deserve the same opportunity. So let's get universal pre-K done. It's pretty close in the city, but we need to expand it. And obviously, I will be a champion for it in the House.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, the question.
Yes, try 11, okay?
11? Okay, here we go. In its first 3 years, the Healthy Initiatives Program, or HIP, has provided access to locally grown produce for 70,000 households who face hunger by piggybacking on SNAP. However, those 70,000 households represent only 7% of all SNAP households in the Commonwealth. And for the HIP program to continue to grow, our legislators will need to commit to significant funding to the program moving into the future. How will you commit to fighting for the continued growth and funding of the Healthy Incentives Program?
Boy, I better in this forum. I better say I'm all in, right? Or I think I think I'll get lynched. It was. This is a. The Healthy Incentive Program is something I had not heard a whole lot about because it's really not my field. Although I did a little reading on it in preparation for this. So, in speaking with a lot of friends in the lower wards of Holyoke, but also in Ward 3, Ward 3 has a fairly impoverished neighborhood. So. Food insecurity is very real, and certainly what's happening in as far as schools, meals in school, either preschool or post school, it's vital because quite often that's the only meal a day, only healthy nutritional meal a day, and so that's something we've all got to stand behind. And I'll certainly join my my two colleagues in commitment to being a supporter of it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duffy, we have questions 4, 5, and 10 available.
5.
5? Okay. Question 5. What committee posts would you request if given the chance, and why?
Let me tell you. I am going to ask for the joint committees on higher education, labor workforce development. I'll talk a little bit about those two, and healthcare financing, because that's who's going to deal with Medicare for all. So healthcare financing, that's a big ask. A freshman rep doesn't always get that, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. Higher education, all public education is a huge priority for me. But I'm going to ask for higher education because of our gym, Holyoke Community College, which is going to be a linchpin so vital when as our economy opens back up, both with the educational opportunities it provides for folks who are like, maybe I'm not going to go to college right now, and also the workforce training. Labor and workforce development, I come from unions. Labor is my political home, and I know and care about those issues and intend to be advocating for them. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Beaudry, you have questions. Oh, you already know you want 10?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What is your number one policy priority, and what are a few concrete action steps you will take to further it?
Sure. So I think that whoever the next state rep is from Holyoke needs to ensure that the Student Opportunity Act, the first major education reform bill since the 1993 Massachusetts Education Reform Act, is implemented with fidelity. We did not anticipate a pandemic-induced recession when we passed this bill, but nevertheless, the needs of our students are not even level, they are growing. We have social emotional learning needs. We have kids who are isolated from their fellow students. We have kids of color who are watching the national racial reckoning unfold before their eyes, and they need support. And we need to make sure that reimbursement rates for English as a second language learners, special education, and low income student reimbursement rates are exactly where they were promised that they would be by this Commonwealth. I grew up in the Holyoke Public Schools that was governed by the 1993 law, and it was a failure to cities like Holyoke. And so working with the Gateway City Caucus, communities like Holyoke across this Commonwealth, we need to band together, leverage our votes, and make sure that in proceeding budgets, we make sure we live up to our promises.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, you have question 4. It is, farm workers and food workers are essential workers. What would you do to ensure that they have access to free PPE, testing, childcare, etc., especially if schools aren't opening up 5 days a week?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because but why limit the farm workers and food workers? There's so many people that are just not getting the services that demand. We referenced that a little bit earlier, Natalia, in the program, how I indicated that along with my business clients, we had to donate free materials to HPD and HFD and South Holyoke as well, and the gratitude was really right up front. So. I'll say it again. The power of the mayor's office and a strong mayor system is such that he or she can direct resources to wherever he or she wants. In this case, we have resources. The most recent example, $62,000 going to a former chief of staff for the mayor who's now on the Board of Health with absolutely no health care or health experience. But that's the kind of government we elected in the city. And that's the kind of government we're stuck with. But that's going to change soon. And it'll change with the state reps race, and it'll change in room 1 next year. And I look forward to helping that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartley. And now we move on to the closing statements. You will each have 90 seconds to share your final thoughts. We're starting with Mr. Bartley.
Yeah, so the theme on Talia is what I read. I did get that part. Why did you decide to run for the seat, and why should voters support you? And I was as shocked as anyone when the seat came available. I had no intention of running. I'm in my 5th, and what I intended to be my final term as a Ward 3 counselor, which has been just a really rewarding experience. And if I can say one thing, encourage anyone to run for office. Public office is really a joy. For anyone, despite the ankle biters out there, and there are plenty of them online, but they can't stand the way they look in the mirror, so they'd rather lash out at somebody else. It's embarrassing, I tell you. But why should voters support me? Going in for a vote is really it's a holy experience, and that's something as an individual choice. I hope they'll look at my education, my experience in government, my passion and commitment for the city of Holyoke, my dedication to public service. I have a great legacy with my dad, who was the last speaker from Holyoke, Mass. But at the same time, when he was speaker, believe it or not, the president of the Senate was from Holyoke, Mass. How about that for history? I wonder if many of you on this forum even know that. But that was way back in the 1960s and 1970s, before any of you were born. And so there is a history of Holyoke in Boston. It's my intention to bring that legacy back and be a great advocate for the city. And I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartley. Next up for the closing statement is Mr. Beaudry.
Thanks, Natalia. Thanks for all the organizations that are hosting tonight. A former Massachusetts state rep himself, John Adams, and I'm paraphrasing here a bit, but suggested that if good people don't run for office, others will. And so while I've worked around politics my entire career, when Rep. Vega announced that he was not seeking re-election, I felt as though it was my duty to bring my experience and my knowledge into this race and offer voters me as what I believe a strong option to move forward in this seat. As I talk to voters one-on-one on phones and socially distant on doors, I continue to hear a desire for there to be a shakeup in personnel and our political leadership. Good intentioned people have been running the show for over a decade. We were promised a renaissance that in many ways has not materialized. And so I want to offer myself up as a new face, as a new perspective, as a fresh set of eyes on our persistent problems. And I would be proud to represent my hometown on Beacon Hill next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beaudry. Ms. Duffy, your closing statement, please.
Sure thing. So I'm running because I really love this city. You welcomed me in, and yes, I've got this direct experience right now, but it's also how that experience relates to the crucial issues that we've been discussing tonight. Our office was focused on food security. Previously, we're working on breakfast after the bell and supporting local food marts. And then as soon as the schools closed, we were able to call on those relationships and that work. I've got those relationships. This is going to keep going into the fall, into the winter, through our reopening. And I am anticipating sort of, we're seeing already starts and stops in the reopening. I am working with legislators every day. I'm working with local agencies here. I can immediately call on resources, those relationships and alliances, and I can bring best practices from around the state to Holyoke. So for these reasons, I humbly ask for your vote on September 1st.
Thank you, Ms. Duffy. We would like to thank again Ms. Patricia Duffy, Mr. Patrick Beaudry, and Mr. David Bartley, the three candidates for the 5th Hampden County seat for state representative. And I'm Natalia Muñoz from Holyoke Media. This has been produced by Holyoke Media, my colleague Johan Rashi Vega. And now back to you, Laura Sylvester.
Thank you everyone for tuning in tonight or for watching on repeat. Thank you to Natalia Muñoz for moderating and to the candidates for sharing your views. Thanks again to our co-sponsors CISA, the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective, Valley Opportunity Council, and WestMass ElderCare. Thank you to Katie Noonan for providing Spanish translation and to Christina Maxwell for timekeeping. We have 2 additional forums coming up. The second Hampden and Hampshire Senate Forum featuring Senator Jim Welch and Adam Gomez will be next Wednesday, August 19th from 7 to 8 p.m. And the 9th Hampden Forum featuring Denise Hurst, Sean Mullen, and Orlando Ramos will be next Thursday, August 20th from 4 to 5 p.m. Please check the Food Bank's social media pages for more information. Remember to register to vote by August 22nd and to vote on the primary September 1st. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.